But Michael Pittman's the number one receiver on this team. Mm-hmm. We've seen what he can do at the X position so far, and he's dominating the targets, and more so, he's producing with those targets. He looks like a bona fide number one X receiver.
Yep.
The kind of fantasy football receiver that you get a good solid 5 to 7 years out of high level. Maybe it's wide receiver 5 overall. Maybe it's wide receiver 16 overall at some point throughout his career. But to me, he looks like he's a bona fide stud. I would do that.
He reminds me so much of, and I think we even comped him to him when we were doing our film studies and stuff like that. But the more I see him play, he still just reminds me so much of like that Vincent Jackson, just such a big physical presence and just comes down with the ball. Just always seems to come down with the ball. But he's even showing some things after the catch at times too. He's doing a little bit. That's not his forte. That's not his best attribute, but he can get it done there. And in an offense where, T.Y. Hilton's hurt again, Paris Campbell's hurt again, they need that guy, and it's tough to do that when you don't really have a lot else there. The fact that he's been able to produce at this level, especially when the offseason was as messed up as it was with Wentz not being there basically all offseason and, with the injury and that kind of stuff, like to do what he's been doing is just so incredibly impressive.
I mean, I think it does help that he's 6'4" and they can throw it up to him when he's got 3 guys around him, and he seems to be coming down with the ball. You know what I mean? He is really. I don't want to say he's mastering it because I think he still has room to grow, but he's really doing well in that area. And Carson Wentz is trusting him, and that relationship is only going to grow and get better as these guys kind of work together throughout the rest of the season and the rest of their careers. Mm-hmm. So it's headed in the right direction. Everything that we had hoped, I think, to see out of him, I'm definitely seeing. I don't know. I'm guessing you guys are as well.
Yeah, 100%.
The way that we're talking about this. So he's definitely an ascending player. One of these guys that kind of came in a little slow, but now he's really bursting onto the scene.
It goes back to, I've said this multiple times on this podcast, when we did our rookie breakdowns of the 2020 rookie wide receivers, when it was all said and done, I ended my receiver breakdowns going, now that I've watched all these rookies, my final conclusion is I was way too low on Michael Pittman Jr. Like, after looking at all these guys as a whole, he belongs in this first round.
Yep.
Even in hindsight now, that's a really strong class.
Very
really
strong
class. But he's right up there with those guys. He's up there with those A.J. Browns, the Justin Jefferson guy. You know what I mean? He's up there with that mold of kind of receiver because he's the kind of guy that's going to get you 15 points per game, right? He's going to get you there with those big touchdown games and get you a little bit more. So going back to Calvin Ridley, if I had to flip him for that, I feel comfortable with that because I'm getting a young receiver. I mean, what is he, 23 years old?
Maybe 24, but maybe 24? He's not old.
Number one receiver in the team. Not a lot of competition when it comes to other receivers.
24.
Okay. Anybody else they bring in, they would never bring in a player like him to compete with him as well. So he's going to be the red zone threat.
Yeah, more of a slot guy or a speed guy or something like that.
And you said Vincent Jackson earlier, and I think that is he has shades of that as well. But you can see there's little bits of like Mike Evans almost in him as well. I mean,
absolutely.
Another big guy who's just dominant with his size alone, and that's 6'4", 220 pounds. He's every bit of that and more. I mean, he's a very good player.
And the nice part too is you have some of these receivers where we talked about some stuff that was obviously concerning what happened with Henry Ruggs, but there's a lot of these receivers that are divas, that are me guys, that are off the field concerns or maybe locker room concerns or different things like that. Michael Pittman is like the cream of the crop, like great kid, smart.
Nick Chubb.
Yeah, exactly. Very similar mold as Nick Chubb.
Son of a former NFL player, so he's been here. He knows
how it works. Yep. Like there's so many positive things going in his direction and it doesn't hurt that he's in the division that he is. He gets to play Tennessee, who's not a strong defensive team. And he gets to play Houston and Jacksonville twice a year, each of those teams. So that's 6 of his games every year is against a Tennessee team that does not have a very good defense at this point, and 2 of the worst in the league. Like that's great for his future. Yeah,
these guys always come around every single year in Dynasty that we say the same thing every year. I say the same thing. Is what looks like an overpay today will be underpaid tomorrow. That's Michael Pittman Jr. right now. If you're out of it for any reason whatsoever, and you have a high caliber older wide receiver, 28, 29, a Devontae Adams on your roster, DeAndre Hopkins on your roster, and you're looking to make a lateral move for long-term benefits. Again, these are moves you got to make in Dynasty. You got to be smart with them. And sometimes, people are so quick to trade for draft picks, but we like to focus on are these younger guys that offer where the arrows just keep, like we see that arrow still going up, and then the plateau is a top 16 plateau for a couple of years. And that's Michael Pittman Jr. to me. This is to go out and get today kind of player, because pretty soon he's going to be in that tier where he's going to be much more expensive to get. It's not going to be as easy to do. If you have Devontae Adams right now, a contender, a DeAndre Hopkins, somebody might still not make that trade with you because he's doing so well. You might not be able to make that move. But sometimes on names alone, you can get that done. You could offer Devontae Adams and maybe try and get a 23 second or get a 22 second on top of that for Michael Pittman. But at the same time, guys, like I'm okay if I'm out of it with one of those old guys. Again, 28, 29, that's not like end all be all there. You still got a couple of years. But I would just, if I'm in a kind of a rebuild kind of mode, like I would just rather reset and get Michael Pittman Jr.
And hopefully this was one of the guys that we pushed the hardest in the offseason. I know after week 2 or 3 of the season, he was the guy that I said, like, this is my buy for our buy sell episode. Like he was one that we pushed over and over and over. So hopefully you bought while he was still pretty inexpensive, when people were like, I don't know, they're getting Carson Wentz as their quarterback, and he didn't start off super strong as a rookie. He only had a K year. I mean, you could have gotten him straight up for a late first probably this year with right around draft time, with the hype around Elijah Moore and all Rashad Bateman and all these guys. You probably could have got close to that straight up for Michael Pittman Jr. So hopefully you went and got him now, because his price tag has doubled easily at this point.
Yeah, and signs were there. Like when we were talking about the offseason early in the year, we mentioned, hey, look what he did in the playoffs at the end of the year, closed it out. Say exactly what he's doing now, heavily targeted. Probably arguably when it comes to young receivers for price tags, because you're always looking for price tags. Yeah, Michael Pittman Jr. is not cheap, but the price tag is still cheap for what he's going to be worth 12 months from now in my eyes. So I am definitely, as you guys then too are as well, advocating, go out there and buy. What might look like an overpay today will be underpaid tomorrow. If you're in the middle of the road, you're looking to readjust, this is the perfect guy to go get. Somebody needs running back help, go get Michael Pittman Jr. You got older receivers, go get Michael Pittman Jr. You got an older receiver that's not as high caliber as Devontae Adams, give up that receiver and give up your first round pick. Like he's that good. That's how I feel about him. Like I think he's in that second tier right now of wide receivers with the potential to get even higher.